Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It's December 13th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And today was CPI news at 7:30 this morning. We talked about that yesterday, and you can see the huge spike up, and we sold off considerably. Still closed up for the day, right at the midline of that range. Notice too that we do on this blue channel working up, or cyan channel, we do have a break and a new high now. Um, so we could turn down again here. We may make we could start trending lower again. Tomorrow might trigger something. Tomorrow's FOMC announcement. So I noticed they raised the margins again during the overnight to prepare for that. So my guess is the margins are going to be higher all the way through to the news item. So and they'll probably lower them after the news when things settle down. So just be prepared. If the margin's too high, you may ought to just not trade tomorrow. Um, I mean, they're expecting something crazy to happen, so that's why they're raising margins. That's why they did it today, because this was a huge spike that ends up selling off. So we'll see what tomorrow brings, but you can see that it was really mostly trending down today because we spiked up here early in the morning, and so we spent the whole day trending down, and there was a gap on the chart today, which I talked about in the mid morning chart this morning, and sure enough, prices went right to that to fill that gap, and then traded up from there. So we'll flip over and take a look at that chart, and you can see what I'm talking about. Here's a look at today's 2,000 tick chart. You can see we pretty much trended down all day. Notice the blue line. That's where the gap was. Notice where we opened this morning, way up here. And yesterday, this was the high of the day right across here where this blue line is. So there was no, even though you see it during the overnight, when you open up at 8:30 right here, there's no trading between here and here on looking at the 8:30 uh, regular stock market sessions. So that's a gap. And prices, we usually try to fill that. And notice where we went to. We went right to that spot, bounced, and went higher from there. So that was the target, and usually if it keeps going, the next target is the close from the previous day, which would have been the red line. But that was obviously our target, and we bounced right off of that. So I couldn't have called that one any more to the closer than what that is right there. So, but that's kind of what you would expect, and that's exactly what we saw. And you can see the spike here. Since this was at 7:30, and you want to be flat going into it, I just say don't trade till after this. There's nothing really there prior to that. And somebody else asked me why my chart looks so much different than theirs. If you hadn't flipped over to the March chart yet, then you're behind. I mean, all the volume is flipped over to the March 23 chart, and so you need to have flipped over. And I know it usually switches on a Thursday. Um, I don't know if they changed something this time or what happened, why it switched at a different time period than it usually does. Maybe they've changed it. I haven't had a chance to look into it. Doesn't matter. NinjaTrader normally gives you a warning too, but I know not everybody trades NinjaTrader, but usually there's a warning that pops up and says, hey, flip to the new chart. Um, Time to roll to the new chart or whatever. So you got to keep up with these dates and these rollover dates and news items and stuff like that. If you're going to trade, be acutely aware of everything you're doing and make sure you know what you're doing, especially if you're trading live. And really, most of you probably shouldn't be trading live if you're not profitable yet. You're just going to be donators if you do. But people never listen to me. So this is big important stuff that you need to know about if you're going to trade futures. You need to know the rollover dates. You need to know when the news items are coming out. You need to be aware of their raising margins and so forth. Because if you get on here and don't know what you're doing, you can wipe yourself out in a New York second. And technically, you could lose more than the money you have in the account, and you could be responsible for it. So just make sure you know what you're doing if you're trading futures. They're actually, in my opinion, if you trade and you use safety stops and you trade like we teach you to trade, it's really safer than stocks because you don't have to worry about day trader patterns. You don't have to worry about when you can go short versus when you can go long. You can go short or long at the same at any time at any point, just as easy. The tax benefits are better for futures than stocks. So there's a lot of benefits for trading stocks. And that's why most professional traders that are day traders trade the ES because there's plenty of volume. There's no short rules. There's no day trader patterns. There's none of that stuff that you have to deal with when you're day trading stocks. And so it's just a much more conducive market to trade. But anyway, let's get to the chart. You see it here. Um, the trend is down. Once you got these first couple of swings, just draw your channel there. And you can see that pretty much fits kind of all the way down the midline. We reached the bottom. We bounced, went to the other side, got a break. We never made a new low though. So, but anyway, that doesn't matter. The trend was in play all day, and really it was mostly down. We only came off this trend line a couple of times, so you really had to play the shorter term stuff like usual. And just in case it was going to be a range day, you should have had the pink on here early, but it was pretty obvious as soon as we got there we were going lower, so it was no range day. It's just a trend day. But anyway, don't trade during the blue block. That's the CPI news. Just ignore that. And then we bounced. I don't see any chance to get long here. You're working up, you get a close outside, and then you're working in a little tight, congested range there. Let me zoom in where you can see it. And you break out. So this is like a failed breakout, that far away from the EMA with that big a bearish bar that broke higher and turned down. Just go short if it breaks lower. That should be an easy scalp. Maybe you catch the high of the day. Doesn't turn out to be the high of the day quite yet. We still get another move up. But notice we come back up and we make another high, and then we make a lower high here. And so I like going short there on that lower high double top. The bar is like 9 ticks, I think. Yeah. Just to ride it back to the EMA. And that's all you would have got out of it. Then it bounces again and goes higher. I don't see anything up here I really like. So you can't really catch this sell off here. And, by the time you get down to here, you've gone too far. There's not really any setups here either. There is a second entry here, but the signal bar is no good. And of course, you get a break of this channel here. This is like a spiking channel down. That's a strong move, but there's just no setups. And you get the break, move to a new low, and then you're going higher again. And I don't see anything here until we get over here. You get a first entry, second entry. And I marked this one green because we're still below the EMA. It's a little bit congested, but it's clearly a second entry. So maybe you take that trade. If you get over here and kind of draw a trend channel too. I probably would have drawn it like that right there. There's a close outside, but no new low. But it's a second entry. You're looking for a retest of the high here. You're looking for prices maybe to come back up to this trend line. So there's reasons to consider long there. I don't think it's ideal. I'd probably wait for something better. You get a failure here, but signal bar is no good. Then you get another matching signal bar. So technically you could have gone short there on a failure. But again, the failure technically occurred over here, and that looks a little congested. So I don't like that one either. But just by being patient, a few minutes later, you get a second entry short with this big bearish bar. And I probably wouldn't have a problem trading that on the engulfing bar. It gives you a little more room. But I will say this, no matter how if you waited for this to close, you probably wanted to let it break lower and drop a limit order a little bit back in here just to give yourself some room in case it bounces like it did. It wouldn't have stopped you out regardless, but it might be worth waiting and see if it backs up some and gives you a little better entry, which it would have. I mean, you could have entered all the way back up into here. I don't know if I would have tried to be that conservative with it, because a lot of times you'll miss a good move. Um, and the other thing to think about if you get too conservative is we did make a new low, although there's still a good chance you'll make another move down there. So something to think about. Um, I like if there's enough room there, which you can see that there's just enough. There's actually an extra tick there. So you could trade that on the engulfing bar. There's at least 6 ticks. So, um, if you want to trade that on the engulfing bar, it might be one I trade on it, because you do have enough room to get out. And usually it's going to at least make a tick lower. It might take another leg to do it sometimes. So that's what you got to be concerned about. But prices would have had to rally a good bit to come back and take that stop out. But anyway, it runs to a new low. Then you got a trend working up, close outside, couple legs up. We don't quite make a new high. We just kind of make a triple top there. But either way, you got this little congested range, and as long as you got room to get out between here and here, you can go short there. The thing is, it kind of gaps here. You probably would have had time to get your sell stop in here on this one though. And then notice the new high, and you get a first entry, second entry. So that's a failed second entry long when it breaks lower there. A good chance to go short. You make another low, and then you get a first entry, second entry. Big bearish bar, plenty of room to get out. I like that trade. And it probably traps some longs there, but this thing just kind of takes off here. You don't get another chance until you get another repeat pattern here. We saw that pattern again. Looks almost just like that one. Similar to another one back there. Working up. First entry, and then it breaks higher and turns down, second entry. This is another one you might go short on the engulfing bar, because there is strong resistance there, and it looks like a range. So it's another one you might trade. And if you wait till here, you probably can't go short. And that's why I marked this one green, because it's such a big bar and so close to the lows. I don't know that I risk that one. You could let it break lower and drop a limit order somewhere, but you can see you would have to ride this all the way back to here, and then you just get another chance to enter right there on a lower high off the top of the range again. And it's a first entry, second entry failure again. And then we tested this lows how many times? So now we've got a break and another new low, and then we've tested this low 1, 2, 3 times at least. Plenty of room back to the midline EMA. Just go long there. You should get a scalp out of that. And then there's you another failure right there with a bearish signal bar off the top of the range. Perfect setup as long as you got room. I'd be a little leery of the midline here since we bounced there the last couple of bars. So just make sure you enter with enough room. But when it comes back again and fails, actually, the reason I like this one too is technically I'd just call this a chance to get short off the high of the range. And because this looks like a double top and sideways stuff, so technically this is a first entry, second entry. So I would treat this like the failure, and that's probably going to create a trap that'll push it on down at least to the lows here, and it just keeps going. And as usual, it fails out the bottom of the breakout here. Failed out the top, failed out the bottom. And somebody will probably ask me about that one. It's just too sideways there. That's the only reason I don't like that one. You can see it right there. A little bit of congestion. I mean, it's one of those you might say. It's because it is a pretty bearish bar. Maybe you go short there. Close back inside the range. But you see it comes right back, but you would have got a scalp out of it too. So we drop on down, and then we're just kind of bouncing higher. I don't see any setups there. The green channel is obviously valid. You get a close outside. There's a second entry long right there, but not a very good signal bar. Um, you actually get a second entry short here, and you may say, okay, this is working down here, and there's no break or close outside yet. So that one's tempting. And if you took it, I would say okay, but this is a range, and we're right in the middle. We didn't quite get to the low, but that's close enough maybe, so we could be going up here, and you might get trapped. So it's not a great setup. There is a lower high here. I didn't mark it because now it just looks a little congested. Although, again, it's one of those you could probably argue to be green. And notice where we go. We go down and we actually test the low this time before we bounce again. And this is where you got to be careful. Just kind of right here in the middle. There is a triple test right here. You can see that. 1, 2, 3. The problem is I don't think there's much room back to the EMA there. Yeah, there may be enough room there to take that one. So maybe you make that green. It's just hard to know when you're in the middle of this range here, and we just came off the middle. We could be going lower, but there's a triple test. It is a decent signal bar. Of course, it runs up to the top. 2 sideways in here to take that one. And you don't get a chance, and it bounces again and again. Not a very good signal bar down here off the bounce, so it just runs straight up, and then it turns down again. No signal bar. You might have traded this one. I looked at this one a little bit, and I'll mark it green. Notice there's a new high, first entry, second entry, and we are below the midline. If it breaks lower there, maybe you go short just because of that key entry point. But there's support right across there, and the midline's right here. It's just reasons to be concerned about it. I just don't see anything in that whole range I really like that I'm just say, hey, that's a sure thing. So I see a bunch of green ones maybe. We're working on down. Again, that's just a first entry short, but we do get a close outside here, and notice this channel's working up. You get a close outside here, move to a new high, and it turns down, but there's no setup there. You drop on down, though, and then you get a second entry, plenty of room to scalp out. Decent signal bar, like 11 ticks. That's a good move. And then finally we get to the other side down here. There's a second entry short below that bar, but not a very good setup, not a very good signal bar. It does confirm the trend line. It's too congested there. Here you got to go short at the lows, and of course it bounces quickly. You're working up. This is actually a second entry, third entry. So I'm not crazy about it. You might argue that that one is a triple test right across there, and it's fairly bearish bar, but we had a pretty good move up to that, and then we made a new high. So again, I'd say sit tight. And then when you get this second entry short here, that you can definitely call that a triple test and a very bearish bar. Now we're below the EMA. I like that one, and it turns out to be a pretty good move. Drops on down, bounces. Again, I don't see anything. It's a possibility you say, okay, we got a new low here. It's a double bottom and a first entry, second entry. I'm not crazy about it. Maybe you mark that one as a possibility. And you actually get a triple test across here, but no signal bar. And again, this is just a range. And I just don't see any good setups there. We continue to move on up, so this is the move, a new channel here. Let me mark it. And again, I don't see any setups here. It just runs higher. You get a close outside, 2 legs to a new high. You had this double top and a little failed break higher. You don't really know this is a range yet. It just looks like resistance up here. Maybe you trade that one too. I'd wait on a lower high just to be safe. and you don't really ever get a good lower high. You actually break out of the channel, so you got a little failed break lower, but no setup here. There's your signal bar, too bearish, runs up, and it makes a lower. That's your first close outside. Maybe it closes outside here. That's not a convincing close outside. So this looks like the first one, and we didn't quite make a new high right there, so it could push up again. And by the time that closes, it looks too congested. And of course, it drops down. There is a second entry long here, not a very good signal bar. And you're just chopping sideways. This isn't worth risking anything in here. This is the only decent signal bar really right here. Of course, that signal bar doesn't look too bad. But you can see we're just struggling to get above that midline. I mean, that EMA right there. And we definitely can't get above the midline. So it's just not very, there's just no, it's not worth risking a lot on it. So just sit tight and wait on something better. And of course, finally we break out here and run up, and we get the break of the main trend line. And then we make that lower high. It breaks higher and turns down. It gives you a big bearish bar, still way away from the EMA. That's the one you want to take. And look at it go. Boom. And you can see we found support at the bottom of the range again, and then get another lower high. But you don't want to go short into that because it could fail on you. You want to see prices tested a couple of times from underneath, and we don't get that. And of course, you get the break of the yellow channel here, and it runs to a new low. It looks like a couple of legs down, sideways before it takes off again. And I just don't see anything in here that's worth risking. This is a second entry long here. Notice the new high, and you went higher first entry, and then it turned down again and came back. So when it broke above this bar, it's a second entry long. You've already had a break, and then we didn't get a new low yet, though. So that's a good enough reason to be real concerned about going long yet, especially when that trend line just held as resistance again. It looked like it was going to hold again, but it pushes on through. So the trend line works out, but you just don't know that's going to happen in advance. And I just don't think there was anything this late in the afternoon worth taking. And that takes you into 2:30. So there it is again. News items spiked up, and then we just went into this downtrend to feel that there was a gap on the chart down here at 40. I don't know what that was. 40. I want to say it was 40.20 something. 40.27. So that's how I saw it. Yeah, in the big scheme, which it looks like it's still a trading range. But we trended up super strongly and then took it all back, trending down, and kind of reset again. So anyway, I'm not going to drag it out any. It's pretty long. We're getting towards 25 minutes here. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.